Hi folks, this is Dr. D and it's Friday afternoon and I wanted to share something with you. I've been trying to help a student with their research project and I totally missed something that I want to show you when I previously looked at the data. Now, this data set was very large and I guess I just skimmed over that. One of the issues you have extremely large data sets is that if you're trying to run a test of hypothesis, a two-sample t-test, later on doing a regression, whatever, when you get very large sample sizes, the number of observations, then actually doing a test of hypothesis becomes almost moot. The power of the sample gets so large that essentially any difference that you measure will be turned statistically significant, even if it's really trivial, has no real meaningful difference in the real world mathematically, because the way the hypothesis tests work with these very large sample size, that's what you'll find out. In this particular case, the student had noticed that the data was skewed. When you looked at the histograms, you can see that, and I'll show you some of that a little bit later. Skew, if you remember, means that the data is clustered, over on one side, and there's a long tail off to the other side, and it can be positive skew if the tail is on the right side. It can be negative skew if the tail is on the left side. But the problem with, if the skew is bad enough, then the assumptions that go into the common hypothesis test that we teach in this course go off the charts and the results aren't really valid. So what I did, I went into Excel, opened up a copy of this student's data set, and then I started up CoPilot. Went up here and clicked CoPilot in the home menu, and it opened up this chat on the right side. Now I want to emphasize this is basic CoPilot. If you've got a paid subscription to Office, it's now called Microsoft 365, then you will, I think last January, you were given, that's a bad choice of words, access to CoPilot in this case Excel, but they also raised your cost, I think $3 a month or something like that. And it's basic CoPilot. It's kind of like basic chat and basic Claude and all of the basic tools that are on this premium mindset that you get a taste using the basic tool, and then you run out of whatever and you've got to go to the more expensive tool. This is the basic CoPilot. This is my personal family plan. I have not paid extra for the CoPilot Pro. But this was pretty good. I went in there and I just asked it, okay, I want to run this one sample t-test on this usage kilowatt hour column, and can you check to see if it violates the assumptions for that t-test? And it told me this is what it's going to do, and I said, okay, start using advanced analysis. When it uses advanced analysis, instead of using Excel formulas, it uses Python. And it'll occasionally share some of the information that it gets with Python in this site, but usually it just gives you the results. And this is what it said it's doing. It's looking at that data and it's going to run some tests. The first thing it did was to develop, again, the histogram and the QQ plot. And this is the histogram, and you can see that most of the usage is over here clustered this way, and it's got a long tail to the right, so this is positive skew. And the QQ plot, I'm not going to go into that, just know because we got these big gaps between the straight line and the actual data, that violates some of the assumptions. And it ran a normality test. Again, that's beyond the scope of our course. It picked one of those for large, and this is the first time it reminded me how large this sample set is, 17,000 observations. and it ran the test, and it says it's got a p-value of 0, which is significant, and it says, yep, we just proved that this is skewed. It does not follow a normal distribution, and therefore the standard t-test would not be appropriate. And so I said, let's transform the data and try it again. Now, you can do a number of different transformations. The standard step 1 is called a log transformation, way beyond the scope of this course. And it went through and again used Python, and it transformed that data and then reran the test and said still significant. And so it's still inappropriate. So I asked it, can we do a bootstrap method? Now again, that's beyond the scope of the course, although we do teach it in that 231 data literacy course how to do this, but it's not easy to do it in Excel. Bootstrap is where we just reuse the same data over and over again, and it allows you to not have to worry about all these assumptions of these hypothesis tests. And it went ahead and did that bootstrap, ran the test. By the way, it keeps reminding you, now I've got auto save turned off. In order to use CoPilot, you've got to be saving your data to OneDrive. Again, you get OneDrive if you've got a paid subscription to Microsoft 365. OneDrive comes with it. But that's a requirement that Microsoft gets to see your data. And we went through and it did that work, and it came back and it said, okay, our bootstrap one sample t-test equivalent gives us a p-value of 0, extremely strong evidence that there is a difference. And I just gave it an assumed value of 2.5 that we're testing against. And so I said, well, let's run it for a different value. Gave it 2 this time, I think. Still came out extremely significant. And then that's finally, I guess I had my cup of coffee and I said, 17,000 observations, no wonder they're all going to come back. And I asked the question, do the size of the sample? Yes, it says yes. Even with a bootstrap, that large sample size means you're always going to get very, very small p-value is always a statistically significant result. And so then I was trying to ask it, how can I share this conversation? Unfortunately, on these basic plans, there's not an easy way. You can't just get a link to this conversation since we're doing it inside Excel. You can't save a copy. Save a copy of the file, then this chat disappears. CoPilot cheap version doesn't make it easy to get a PDF out of this. The only way to do it is copy paste into a Word document, and you lose a lot of formatting. Pain in the rear. So I just kind of gave up on this. So that was pretty much the end. But I just want to point out to you, you can get a lot done using this cheaper version of CoPilot that comes with the basic plan. Now again, you've got to have a basic plan, an individual plan or a family plan like I do. And they're not, inexpensive. It's, 20, 30 bucks a month. I think the student plan is a lot cheaper than the family plan, obviously. But it's still something out of pocket right now. I'm still nudging the school to get the .edu email accounts for students, which will make it the process of getting, you access to these more advanced pro version AI models a little bit easier. I finally got Microsoft to say, well, even if you don't have a .eu, there's a way you can still get it. Excuse me. But you've got to get with the registrar and getting some documentation that says, yes, you're currently enrolled student, yada, yada, yada. And it's going to take, 10 days to 2 weeks to get through that paper process in order to get access to the cheaper version of the student account, individual account. Anyway, remember that if you've got access to CoPilot, even the basic CoPilot in Excel, it's a good tool to have these kind of conversations about working with data. And again, up to a point, it'll actually help you inside Excel on these assignments. But again, you're probably going to hit that run out of token level or whatever it is, and it'll shut down. But it's worthwhile learning how to do it. So I hope this helps.